Hello, this is Talking Cafe Live. I'm Bella Lapwood, a village agent for Mendip, and today I'm joined by Mark and Beth from Somerset Waste Partnership. They are here to discuss Somerset Food Waste Week. So we're going to have a little bit of a chat about the food waste situation and how to reduce food waste. And Mark's got a presentation for us, so we'll have a quick zoom through that.
Yeah, thanks, Bella. We're just going to talk you through a few slides, and then hopefully there's a few questions, and we'll try and cover everything we can about food waste, how to reduce it, and why we should be.
And if you've got any questions, stick them in the comments box, and we'll try and get to them at the end. If not, you can pop them in. If you're watching on catch up, you can put them in later, and we'll ask Somerset Waste to answer them for you. They're the best people to know. All right, so I'll start the presentation, and we'll go from there.
Lovely, thanks, Bella. So to start with, this is Somerset Food Waste Week. It's something we're hoping to make an annual thing, just to really highlight the whole issue of food waste and ways of reducing it. So it's all week, started on Monday and runs up to Sunday. First of all, just a bit of context to give you an idea about food waste and the numbers in Somerset. So there's 46,000 tonnes of food waste was collected last year from the curbside. So that's both in your little brown recycling food waste bin and in your refuse bin, because quite a lot of food waste ends up in the refuse bin, which is something we'd like to avoid. And to try and get some idea about kind of the impact of that, that figure there of 172,000 tonnes, we call that the carbon food print, because basically that's the carbon impact of all that wasted food. So obviously there's always going to be some food waste, but if we were in an imaginary world able to get rid of all of it, then we'd be talking about 172,000 tonnes of carbon impact, and that's about the same as sticking an extra 66,000 cars on the road for a year. So it's all these are big figures, and it's quite hard to get your head around, but hopefully that gives you some idea that it's actually there's an important carbon impact of wasting food. And they're 72%. I think this is a figure that surprises a lot of people. That's avoidable food waste. So a couple of years ago, we did a in-depth analysis of what was in the food waste and establishing what was avoidable if you'd eaten it in time, if you planned ahead and made sure you weren't wasting anything. 72%. There's some stuff that's unavoidable, so eggshells, bones and things like that. You're not going to eat those, so they need to go into the food waste. But there's awful lot of stuff in there that didn't, and then of that food waste, more than a third is still in its wrapping. So clearly, people are, a good chunk of people aren't really proactively managing their food waste. So that just gives you a bit of context. And why is it important? So those carbon figures, that's obviously we want to reduce our carbon impact, and obviously it's making the most of resources. All that food that's being wasted is taken land, it's taken water and energy, it's been transported, all that effort and resource to produce something which then just gets thrown away. Doesn't make sense. And perhaps really important at the moment, saving money. So I think on the average UK household, the estimate is that they throw away about £14 worth of food every week. So add that up over a year, £728. So not insignificant amounts of money, and especially at a time when the cost of living is soaring. Wasting that sort of money, it just doesn't make sense. So from both an environmental and financial point of view, it really makes sense to make an effort to reduce your food waste. So we've got online at the moment, we've got a dedicated web page which has got all sorts of information about reducing your food waste, and we're going to talk through some of the main things now. So my colleague Beth will help as we talk through just a few of the key areas where we think you can make a few simple steps, and little changes can make actually quite a big difference. So Beth, over to you.
Okay, thank you. So the good news is, as you say, we can make simple changes to help us reduce the food we waste, helping to save money and time, and it will reduce that carbon footprint too. Most of the avoidable food waste thrown away from our homes is actually because we buy, cook and prepare too much, or we simply don't get round to using it before it spoils. So a bit of planning can help go a long way. So the very first thing to do is actually check what food you have already, which needs using up, and having a look at those dates. And we'll come on to date labels in a moment. And then have a think about what meals you need to plan for each week. Who's going to be home, who's in, who's out. Households of busy places. Every family is different, and you need to know who's going to be in and wanting a meal to help you plan those meals. And because life doesn't always go to plan, it's useful to plan in a meal from the store cupboard or freezer. So if plans do change, you can simply park that meal for another time, or delve into the freezer if you need a bit more, if, say, for example, your teenagers bring a friend home. So once you've worked out what you want to have during the week, you need to think about that shopping list, whether you write it down on a piece of paper, use a note system on your phone, however you do it. Writing a shopping list and actually checking what you already have, so you're not buying the same thing again that you already got. And then when you go shopping, stick to it. That's the big thing, to not be sort of pulled off to buy too much when you're there. And try and think ahead about making food go further. So if you know, for example, you're going to have, I don't know, roast chicken on a Sunday, you're going to have some leftovers. So plan those leftovers in to make another meal out of those for later in the week, so that that doesn't go to waste. And the other big tip is, don't go shopping when you're hungry. You'll probably buy more than you actually need because you'll get tempted. So by buying better and making those lists, you can really reduce your food waste, by buying what you need. But it's also understanding what you need for your particular family or household. Understanding your food portions. Everyone's portions are going to be different. I clearly like a large meal. Everyone's will be different. Toddlers tend to eat less than adults. Teenagers tend to eat a bit more than the average adult while they're still growing. So it's important to understand those portion sizes to match those to their appetites. And one of the things that you can do is look out for packs that are portioned right for your family when you go shopping. There's no point buying the buy one get one free at the end of the end of the day bargains if you can't use them. They're not going to save you money. So you need to know how much room you've got if you do spot an offer like that, whether you can freeze it or store it at home, and whether you can actually use it in time before it goes off. There are some family packs of things which will work for larger families that could be a better unit price per product. But if you're a single person household, that might not be the best option for you. You might actually find the ones that are more expensive per unit price better value overall, because you're not going to throw half of it away. So it's about understanding those things before you do all your shopping. So the next thing is to be aware of those dates, and understanding those date labels will help you plan to use your food safely. And again, this will save you money and time, because you're not buying things again that because you've got something at home that's gone to spoil. So the use by date is the one that's the really important one. This tells you about food safety, and food with the use by date tends to go off fairly quickly, and it can be dangerous if you eat it after this time. So if it's getting close to the use by date, you can freeze it before the end of the use by date. You can go right up to that date, and then when you need it, defrost it and use it within 24 hours. And the best way to defrost is in the microwave or in the fridge overnight. Or if that's not possible, you can cook it before the use by date if you've got something that's raw, and then store it in the fridge or freezer for another day. Again, if it's in the fridge, you've got 2 days generally to eat it up. If it's gone past the use by date, do not eat it, even if it looks or smells okay, because it may make you ill. The best before dates, they're really about quality, and they're for longer lasting foods, and these are generally safe to eat but may not be at its best quality after this date. So if the food's getting close to its best before date, you can eat it up if you can while it's still at its best to help you enjoy it. It's the best thing that can happen to our food, that it reaches our place and we enjoy it. But if it's gone past its best before date, check for taste and quality. If it looks, tastes, and smells okay, it's probably all right to eat. So you don't need to discard that. Eggs are a little bit different in that they have a best before date. It's kind of a little bit between a use by and a best before date in the just for eggs. They can generally be eaten a day or two after their best before date, but they must be cooked thoroughly if doing so. So no runny eggs. But if you cook it within a day or two after the best before date, they're probably okay. The display until and sell by dates, these labels are for the shop. They're not really for us shoppers. And it's so that they know how long to display the food. If you've got a product with a display until or a sell by date on it that's getting near that date, just eat it up as soon as you can, but don't really worry about it. If it goes out of date, check again for taste and quality. You can use the food if it looks, smells, and tastes okay. So those date labels will help you save from knowing what you can eat safely and what does actually need to be discarded. Next slide. Okay. So storing the food correctly as well keeps food better and for longer if it's in the right place, and you'll end up throwing away less, saving money and time on extra shopping. So the very first simple step that you can do is check your fridge temperature. It needs to be above freezing but below 5 degrees, and about a third of fridges are actually too high in domestic settings, and that's knocking days off your shelf life of food at home. Another thing is not overcrowding your fridge. It needs a bit of air to circulate round for it to be able to work efficiently. Most leftovers can be eaten in the fridge for 2 days, with the exception of cooked rice, which we say for 1 day. You need to be a little bit careful with rice, so you need to make sure that you cool that straight away after cooking if you're not going to eat it there and then, ideally within an hour, and then store in the fridge for no longer than a day before reheating. And it's a good idea to have an eat me first shelf. So if you know when things are coming up to their use by date, it means that you're not going to forget about them in the back of the fridge. It's very easy to sort of overlook things. Most fruit and veg, like carrots, peppers, and apples, are actually best kept in the bag they come in and stored in the fridge to keep fresher for longer. And there's lots of storage tips on lovefoodhatewaste.com website. And again, we'll have links in the chat and at the end of this presentation, more about the Love Food Hate Waste campaign, which is a national campaign that we're supporting through our Food Waste Action Week. So the freezer, again, is another useful tool. It prolongs the life of our food and allows us to prepare food in advance to save time when we're busy. And it also allows us extra time to think up how best to use that food so that we can use it another day. Freezers are a little bit different to fridges. They tend to work more efficiently when they're at least 3/4 full. You can freeze all sorts of things, but remember to portion up your food before you're doing so that you can take out what you need when you need it. And remember to label things. And talk about UFOs in the freezer, unidentified frozen objects, which lead to a surprising dinner when you've defrosted something without a label and suddenly find it wasn't what you were expecting. So labeling can really help avoid that. And if you only have a little bit of food, you can label up just little bits. It's absolutely fine to do that, and it's amazing how much you can make from that. If you've only got enough for one person, why not freeze it? And then when you have enough, you can hold a family free food night where you have a bit of a mixed mash of different things, or you can use those individual leftovers that you've frozen up to help you create other meals. And remember, defrosting is best in the fridge overnight or in the microwave. Don't leave food on the countertop to defrost. You might make yourself poorly by doing that. So we want to make use of the most of every mouthful, and using up forgotten foods and leftovers is a great way, again, of saving money, reducing food waste, and making tasty dishes. There's lots of inspiration on the Love Food Hate Waste website. They have a fantastic selection of recipes, which you can see on the right hand side there. That's the landing page for the recipes and food section. And there's a little checkbox that you can tick for recipes, and you can search under the foods and recipes in the search bar for specific ingredients that you might need using up and you want a bit of inspiration for. There's also down the left hand side a section on collections options, and these are great ideas for using up leftover meat, fruit, vegetables, bread, milk. Meals for freezing, a great way for batch cooking when you have time, ready for a tasty homemade ready meal on a busy day. Um, if you've got challenges with your cooking, there's a one pot meals as well. So if you've only got a hob, there's options for that. And there's also ideas to cook with the kids and much, much more on there. So do have a look on it. And the other thing I like about this is you don't have to be super confident in the kitchen. They've got another selection box down the bottom on the left hand side, which you can select recipes from easy, intermediate, or advanced cooking skills. So even if you're a beginner in the kitchen, there's something in there for you.
And that is a great website, isn't it? Love Food Hate
It
Waste. It's all
it
sorts
is.
of aspects of food waste. It's really worth a look at.
Yeah, there's so many things on there, and lots of great ideas. But that's not the only source. There are lots of other online sources. If you need dietary advice, again, there are specialist websites such as the NHS, British Heart Foundation, Diabetes UK, Celiac UK, Vegan Society. There's lots on there. And again, if you just do an online search of budget recipes, you'll get lots of ideas. So help is just a click away. Next slide.
Okay.
So just wanted to flag up the Love Food Hate Waste Win Don't Bin quiz that they've got at the moment. So again, like us, they're having a food waste action week, and they're actually running a quiz with a chance to win a Panasonic microwave or one of 50 Hellmann's food hampers by taking the Win Don't Bin quiz. And by answering 4 multiple choice questions, you'll get motivational advice which will empower you to make your food go further. And that's not all. By signing up for their newsletter, you'll unlock an email packed with tips designed to help save you time and money and be entered into the prize draw. So do click on the link, lovefoodhatewaste.com/FWAW.
Brilliant. Thank you, Beth. Beth is the font of all knowledge when it comes to food waste. So thank you for that. Just a couple more slides now, just to give you an idea of recycling food waste. So we've talked about we're trying to encourage everyone to reduce food waste, full stop, but inevitably there is some, and what we really want to do is make sure that people recycle any food waste they've got and not put it in their refuse bin. So about 20, when we did a sample, we found about 26% of the contents of the average Somerset refuse bin was food waste. And we estimate just over 60% of households in the county are currently actively recycling their food waste. So that's good, but we can do a lot better. And why is it worth recycling it? It lessens the carbon impact of that food. And it's great what we actually do with food waste in Somerset. It all stays in the county. It goes to an anaerobic digestion plant, which is near Bridgewater, where they turn it into electricity and a soil improver for farms. So it's great. And you can recycle anything, whether it's raw or cooked. The golden rule is please don't don't put any packaging, don't throw it away in the packaging or put any packaging in the food waste container, because that's contamination. The anaerobic digestion plant does not like that. So everyone can have in case you didn't know, everybody can have a free caddying kitchen food waste bin. So the idea is you've got a little caddy in the kitchen, you fill it up, and then you take it out and deposit it in your brown food waste bin, which we then come and collect once a week, along with all your other recycling. They are totally free. You can request them online. Just use the My Waste Services feature on the website, or you can give us a call and request one that way. and they'll deliver them to your door. And for cleanliness purposes, people tend to want to line their food waste caddy. So you can either do that with compostable liners, like you see in that top picture. And the golden rule there is make sure you buy one which has got what we describe as the looped seed logo on it. It's quite obvious when you see it. But other people like to use newspapers, so you can just stuff it into the caddy, push it to the side, make a bit of a pocket, and then you put your food waste in there, scrunch it up, put it in the bin outside. Other people put the food waste down on wrap it like fish and chips, put it out on a couple of sheets of newspaper, fold it up, put that in a caddy, or put it straight in the bin outside. And then the other point to mention is you don't have to have a caddy. People who are perhaps a little bit more concerned about the aesthetics of their kitchen sometimes use bowls, or I've seen people use teapots, just other weird and wonderful things. It doesn't matter as long as it ends up in that food waste bin outside on the right day for us to collect. So please, if you aren't already recycling food waste, start. It's just again one of those little changes. It can make a big difference. So please do. It's free. We come to your door. We collect it every week. And yeah, if you're not doing it, please give it a go.
Mark,
yes.
Question on that, on the liners for the caddies.
Yeah.
Do you have to put a liner in there, or can you just use it without anything? Because I know that the compostable bags can be quite expensive.
Yeah, you can. It's purely a cleanliness thing. If it helps keep it tidy. But yeah, absolutely. If you want to put it straight in there, tip it straight into the food waste bin, and then just give your caddy a little swill, whatever, that's absolutely fine. Whatever works for you. Okay. Sorry, Beth, you sound like you're about to.
No, I was just going to say, and it is really important to use the food waste service, because when Mark was talking about those carbon emissions, in the UK, less than 1% of the carbon emissions related to food actually comes from this final step of it being thrown away from our homes. It's all that bit that happens before, from growing it to transporting it, us storing it at home, and then that last final bit is just the tiny bit of the carbon emissions. So a lot of carbon emissions is actually with that whole chain that comes before that final discarding of the food waste, whether it be in the the caddy system, or if it's ended up in the wrong bin.
So we always talk about the waste hierarchy. So you've got basically reducing is better than recycling. Recycling is really good. Obviously, please recycle as much as you can, but even better than doing that is reducing it, so you don't have to recycle it in the first place. And that's really true for food in particular. And then one final slide, which is some pictures of some lovely bowls and wraps. So during Food Waste Week, we're asking people to share their ideas. We know that people have got great recipe ideas or weird and wonderful little ways of kind of reducing their food waste. So if you share them with us, you can share them by emailing recycle@somersetwaste.gov.uk or posting on our Facebook page, which is @Somerset Waste. And what we've got is a few packs of wax wraps. So these are beeswax wraps made by the Somerset Beekeepers Association, and you can use them for all sorts of kind of storage for food. You can wrap things up when you put them in the fridge, or they work really well in the freezer, or use them as like to transport your sandwiches or other food when you're on the go. Really handy little things to have around and in the kitchen. So if you share your ideas, we'll pick some of the best ones, and then as a thank you, send the contributor some wax wraps. And that's it. That's the presentation. So hopefully we've covered most of what people would want to know, but we're ready to, well, Beth mostly, hopefully, to answer any questions you might have.
So, I mean, I have a question. I mean, what is the most commonly wasted food? I mean, what do people just chuck away that they don't need anymore?
Well, there was some research done a few years ago, which actually put the top 3 as potato, and potato weirdly is twice in this list, because it's fresh potato at the top, and processed potato is actually number 10 on this list, and then followed quickly by bread and milk. And to give you some idea, for bread, it's something like 20 million slices a day discarded in the UK. So there's a lot of bread. And so for a simple thing of maybe freezing half a loaf, if you're not going to use the whole loaf before it spoils, freeze half, keep half out, or what you're going to use soon, and take things out and just defrost it as you need it. And that will save you a small fortune over the years just
Yeah.
in bread.
Stick it in a toaster.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it is phenomenal, some of the statistics that come out of this. So again, it was over 1 million glasses of milk and 4 million whole potatoes wasted every day from UK homes. So, all those little bits add up, even if it's like because you've maybe served too much and you've got a bit left over. Actually, particularly if you've got busy households, you've got toddlers that, might be hungry one day and not another, or teenagers where their appetites are fluctuating as they're growing. If you serve food, or again, if you've got dinner guests, you don't know how big their appetite is. If you serve food in a central dish, let people help themselves to what they need and go back for seconds if they're still hungry. Then those leftovers, if they don't want them, you've got a pre-made ingredient for another meal. So you can do all sorts of things with leftover vegetables. So there's a lovely root mash idea where you just have leftover random root vegetables, whether it be carrot, you might have some parsnip that you can mix in with potato to bulk it up to make a kind of bit more interesting mash for either as a side, or you could have it as part of a shepherd's pie or whatever, but with a root mash topping. So it's basically an ingredient for another day rather than leftovers to put in a bin.
Okay. So, I mean, really, it's all about changing the way that you think about it, isn't it? I mean, Kieran has been watching and says that he now orders HelloFresh because actually he wastes a lot less because he's got the portion sizes for himself.
Yeah.
So, whereas maybe you might look at that and think it's quite expensive to order the HelloFresh. Actually, if you've bought far too much in regards to vegetables and meat and everything else for your meals, then actually HelloFresh might not be as expensive.
Yeah, and again, it's just about getting to know your portions and thinking ahead. If you are bulk buying and you're going to freeze something, rather than say, I don't know, if you bought a pack of sausages, they come in, I don't know, 6. If you're on your own, again, you'd want to divide those up into portions first and then freeze some for another day, because you're not going to eat them all in one go. If you bung it in the freezer as a whole pack, you've still got the problem when you defrost it that suddenly you've got 6 sausages, which might be too many for one person. Typically they are. So it's about thinking ahead for those kind of things. So if you know what your portion size is right for you and for your family, then you can adjust how you store things so that you can just take out what you need when you need it, rather than you've got too much.
Yeah. Okay. I also have seen some things floating around because of the cost of living crisis and things, I suppose, about people that, if they have got to that point where they haven't managed to get, use up their stuff before it's gone past its best before date, that there's sort of ways around working out replanting things. And there was I can't remember, a post on Facebook saying I think it might have been celery or something, you can actually like regrow it from the supermarket bought thing.
Yes. So again, the distinction is the use by and the best before date. If it's gone past its use by date, don't eat it, unless you've frozen it before that use by date, and then you can use it once it's defrosted within 24 hours. If it's gone past its best before date, actually you can perk up a lot of vegetables without actually having to go to the lengths of planting them and losing them as a food source now. So again, on the Love Food Hate Waste website, they're on that food and recipes page, there's a little button, a checkbox for food, and you could type in something like celery, and it will tell you about how you can put things in water to perk them up again, that are maybe wilting slightly. If you can catch things early enough, again with salads, because they sometimes, particularly bagged salads, there's tips on how to store those to get another day out of them before they start going too far. Obviously, if it's gone too far, then yes, you might be able to grow some of these things. Certainly if you've got an incredibly sprouty potato or something like that, it's affected the inside of the potato, then yes, you could potentially grow that, but much better to actually catch things before it gets like that so that we can eat them and enjoy them. And that's where all this sort of planning and sort of just those simple little tips about thinking about what you're going to eat, buying what you actually need, sticking to your list, and then making sure that what you're preparing is right for your family size, so that if you get it right, then you don't get any leftovers and you don't have to be creative if that's not your thing. But if not, there's plenty of online help to help you with those recipe ideas to make the leftovers into a tasty meal for another day.
Or alternatively, if you're not going to use it, you could donate it to your community fridge.
You can do. I mean, there are certain things that they have a restriction on what they can take, so they wouldn't necessarily want your pre-prepared meal. But if it's still in its food packaging and it's coming up to its date, again, there are apps as well that you can offer things. So if you were going away on holiday and you need to clear your fridge out before you go, there are ways that with the likes of Olio app and various other ones that you can actually offer food to people in your area, that can make use of it. Or again, if you've got a community fridge near you and they accept that type of food, if it's still in its packaging and hasn't been tampered with, then they quite happily accept that, and hopefully someone else can make use of it, which is brilliant.
Amazing. So I don't think we've got any other questions at the moment that have popped in. So if there's anyone, I'll just take your presentation out a minute. We'll say hello. So if anyone's got any other questions, if they've watched it back or anything, then please do put them in the comments box and we'll get Beth or Mark to
we'll do our
answer them.
best.
And yeah, so any other questions, feel free, stick them in. Otherwise, that's it from us, unless you guys have anything to add.
No, not from me. Thanks, Bella.
Wonderful. So thank you very much, guys. And
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful to hear about the Food Waste Week.